Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another show of Indo-American Passage, visas, green cards, and how to get them. I'm your immigration attorney, U.S. Immigration, Dave Viswanath with the Banad Law Offices. Ladies and gentlemen, we have offices, two of them in India, in Mumbai and Bangalore, as well as two in the United States, both in New York, Manhattan, and in Queens. And this show, ladies and gentlemen, is every Saturday now. We have a new time, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on ITV Gold, as well as in India, Mumbai, India, on HW News Network. HW News Network, which is a digital platform in India based in Mumbai. I did a show out there. That'll be on Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Okay, so it'll be shown at 10 a.m. here in the United States and 8:30 p.m. in India on Saturdays. Okay, it'll be a weekly show every Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, this show is all about immigration and the crossroads of politics, okay? How politics affects immigration and what you get out of immigration. What do you need? What are the things to think about when you're thinking about immigrating to the United States? Those are all important topics. Obviously, I'm always around to take and entertain questions. You can always email me, dave@banadlaw.com, BANADLAW.com. Dave is the Desi way of spelling it, DEV. And you can always call our offices. The numbers are up on the screen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today's show is an interesting show. It's about administrative processing, okay? That is what occurs. I mean, we have it both in immigration services here in the United States with the Department of Homeland Security, as well as in India with the U.S. consulates. The particular area that I want to talk about is with the U.S. consulates, but I do want to mention administrative processing. And we see it even in immigration court. Administrative processing is a manner in which you're going through the motions of a petition or an application, and what happens is the government needs to take further steps that don't really require the beneficiary or the petitioner or the applicant's input. It's really work most of the time that the government is taking care of, or they're waiting for something to come through. So then what they do is they create what's called this administrative processing to help facilitate that. That's the word. So admin processing is a way to say that there's still administrative work that needs to get done, okay? USCIS, we sometimes see it when they're processing applications, work authorization, travel authorization, and when you find out that your case is being held up, they say to you it's in administrative processing. Usually that means that they're reviewing something in your file or something related to the case, and that's why it's in admin processing. In immigration court, we often hear about administrative closure, okay? That's really a logistical remedy sometimes when a case can't move forward for whatever reason, or it's impractical to move a case forward. They'll put the matter in administrative closure, okay? The judge will close the case temporarily in order for some action or non-action to occur, and then they'll bring the matter back on the docket and move forward with the case. Now, administrative closure is something that has recently, largely because of the Department of Justice and the Trump administration, been attacked in many ways. You know, I think the Justice Department believes that administrative closure is being abused, and there's no outright reason for judges to admin close cases. They should move forward with cases whenever possible, close out cases whenever possible, and deny cases, unfortunately, whenever possible. Query whether or not that's the right approach, but that's definitely the approach that we're seeing oftentimes. Now, luckily for us and for people that are in removal proceedings, immigration judges are lifelong appointments. They don't have the same rights as constitutional Article 3 federal judges, but as a general proposition, they do have lifelong appointment, which means that most immigration judges do feel the comforts of knowing that their job is secure for as long as they wish to hold it, as long as they don't mess up in any major way or become insubordinate. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about in particular is administrative processing as it pertains to the embassy or the consulates, U.S. consulates all around the world, okay? Obviously, one of the areas that we discuss and deal with the most is the consulates in India and the embassy in New Delhi. but we really interact with consulates and embassies all over the world. Definitely in Dhaka, definitely in Islamabad, in Karachi, definitely in Georgetown and Port of Spain, and on occasion Kingston and a few of the other posts that are in Mexico. And for sure Canada. We do a lot of work with clients that are going through either Montreal or through Toronto, and on occasion we'll hear about doing something through Calgary or Vancouver. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, administrative processing is a remedy oftentimes. I shouldn't say a remedy. It's a manner for consular officers to take a step back a lot of times with cases, okay? It's not something that you should fear. It's not something that you should say, oh my God, my case is denied. Essentially means that consular posts need time to either review your case, send out a fraud unit to go and look at what's going on a particular issue that's related to your matter, or to send some queries or information back to Department of Homeland Security to see if they knew about information that you provided them during interview, or they had heard any information that the consulate has now come to figure out or find out. Okay? In any of those situations, or if there's security background checks, in any of those situations, consular officers will often put cases into administrative processing. Now, 90% of consular cases, and this is directly from consular officers that I've spoken with, 90% of cases are adjudicated within the first week or two, okay? There is a smaller number of cases that take longer than 2 weeks because of admin processing, okay? And they'll typically, I would say maybe, another, 5 to 6% of cases, maybe even 7% of cases in that 10%. That'll take at least a month to adjudicate. There's like 2 or 3% of cases that'll take longer than a month, okay? As a general proposition, consulates and the embassy have a position that says, look, if your case has finished in terms of the interview, allow 60 days. Once you know your case is being admin processed, allow 60 days before you reach back to us and ask any questions, okay? Why is that? First of all, consular posts, they realize that people get anxious about cases. So what they do is when matters are being held in administrative processing is they put these cases on an automatic computer calendar. Okay, so people who are waiting for their cases to be adjudicated, there's actually a computer that registers the case. So after a month, it'll red flag the case. After 2 months, it'll red flag the case. It doesn't mean that sometimes it misses a case here and there, but as a general proposition, consular posts have reminders. They're like calendar reminders. Hey, check up on this case. Hey, check up on this case. See what's going on. And because consular posts are dealing with other agencies, right? They're dealing with ICE, they're dealing with Social Security, they're dealing with Department of Homeland Security in USCIS, they're dealing with Customs and Border Patrol, they're dealing with the political branch, right? The executive branch, the president. So with all of these aspects of agencies and sub-agencies that they deal with, and security checks, the FBI, there are so many places where that question comes up. So consular posts want to make sure that any of those agencies or sub-agencies or their fraud unit have the time needed to get that information that they're looking for, find out whether or not something is viable or not, and then report back on the subject, okay? And then consular officers will take that information and one, continue to adjudicate the application in favor of the applicant, or two, potentially continue admin processing because they need to follow up with additional information, or three, deny the case because now they found out that there's something wrong, the applicant did. And let's be very fair about it. There are applicants that do things that, I use the word lafada, okay? But it really is any type of mismanagement. Sometimes knowingly or unknowingly, people do things. They lie about things. They get married and say they're not married. They pretend to be something of a different sexual orientation than they really are. They use someone else's passport to travel to other countries or travel to the United States, or they've used drugs. Those are all aspects of a way someone could be found inadmissible, and those are the questions, the types of questions that consular officers want to deal with. In fact, I have a client now who has a perfectly good green card case, But about 7 or 8 years ago, the individual filed for an employment-based visa. And unfortunately, at that time, that employment-based visa was not granted, and the consular officers made some allusion to the idea that there was no job available. And in fact, there might have been some fraud committed. This gentleman tried to convince them. He tried to send all the information they had requested time and time again to show them that it's a legitimate job and that he has a real interest in doing all of this. And unfortunately, the consulate did not agree. So what did they do? They denied the case. And then he had a green card interview that was coming up based on family-based immigration. And again, the consular officers put the case that previously was rejected back in front of them. They separated the man and the wife. They asked her a bunch of questions about it. They asked him a bunch of questions about it. And ultimately, they put the case in administrative processing. Ergo, that's when we come in. Now, administrative processing is not something that I guarantee ever to be able to solve. But on occasion, we can be very good advocates for our clients when it comes to admin processing. Finding out information from the consulates to assure clients that, their case is at least being handled. Sometimes getting information about why there's a problem in their case. And sometimes just making sure that the clients know that somebody's on their side. Because it's very scary, the idea of having a U.S. consulate, a powerful entity like the U.S. consulate, just tell you, sorry, we can't give you your visa, it's in administrative processing. There's so many clients that just look at that as a denial, point blank. And there are sometimes where some cases in administrative processing and the client doesn't even know, and the consulate never even follows up with the client. And then people just say, you know what? All right, well, I guess my case was denied, and they never follow up on the matter. So that's where an attorney can be very helpful. If you find an attorney that feels comfortable in consular processing work, consular work, interacting with U.S. embassies and consular posts, then utilize those attorneys, utilize that knowledge the attorney has in how to deal with consular posts, and it's not always successful. But I will say this, 9 times out of 10, it'll be more helpful than you doing it on your own. Not always, but oftentimes, because there are other aspects to it too. As lay people, sometimes our anxiety, sometimes our family pressure, sometimes our own nervousness can create a void between our communication with the consulate and getting the results we need. You have to be patient. You have to understand that the consulate is not going to just give you information because you followed up every day for, a month. In fact, there are often times where consular officers will specifically say, do not respond to us. Or, you know what, we're not even going to respond to you. So I caution people to, while the avenue is there for everyone, and it's an open public forum for anybody to engage the consulate, always think about it deep and hard, okay? And I actually had a conversation with a client last week where I told them point blank, look, if you feel comfortable, and I was confident about the client's abilities. I said, if you feel comfortable, by all means, reach out to the consulate, and find out what you can. And I said, if you run into trouble, then by all means, come back to us, But these are the steps that you need to take. In consultation, I discussed what needs to happen. And that person is engaging the consulate and trying to do the right thing. And we'll see what happens, But I do encourage people to understand that administrative processing is not a denial. And there are often times where we can find out more information. And occasionally, not always, but occasionally where once we realize what the problem is, we can actually engage the consulate to facilitate rectifying the issue, helping the consulate to understand the problem or to understand what the issue is in a way that they can still grant the case and not feel like something's missing. Okay, and so one of the things that I would implore upon people who are dealing with administrative processing to consider is that it's a sticky area, it's a gray area. There is almost never a black and white, yes, if you do this, this will happen, if you do that, that'll happen. No, it's all gray, and you really have to rely on a lot of research on your own or the expertise of somebody who understands how it is to interact with U.S. consulates and embassies. The Department of State, as I said before, and I've said on other shows, is an extremely powerful agency, okay? Most of the time, except for limited circumstances, there's no appeal process at all. Occasionally I would argue that sometimes bringing matters before a federal judge is in some ways an appeal, okay? And occasionally we can show that consular officers have maybe abused discretion, or that a consular post has maybe gone awry of the direction or the Foreign Affairs Manual, which is their regulatory guidance. But in the big picture of things, most of the time we don't even have that. Okay, there's no real appeals process. Now, if you have a case that's in administrative processing and the consulate is just being adamant on holding their ground, sticking their feet in the ground, sticking their hands in the ground, and saying we're not giving you any information, which happens. There are some entities, including the visa office in Washington, D.C., where we can approach explaining the situation, explaining what the consulate's doing, explaining the facts of the case, and asking them to intervene. Usually what will happen is the visa office, again, part of the Department of State, and they're sort of like general counsel to all the consulates and embassies in the world. Sometimes what they'll do is they will review the matter, they will reach out to the consulate, ask them their opinion, and then they make a decision. Okay? Sometimes the information is so black and white that they can just make a decision on the spot, and then they'll notify the consulate. No matter what, unless they're very certain that the consulate made the right decision. If a visa office feels the consular post made exactly the right decision, they may not investigate the matter. They may not reach out to the consulate. But in most cases, if there's a question of law or fact that has come up, which is reasonable enough to question the decision that was made, the visa office will investigate that, and if they find that there might be enough of an issue there, they will reach out to the consular post or the embassy to have that matter resolved. I would say this is also true. The visa office and advisory opinions are just that, just advisory. Okay, so consular posts are under no obligation to follow the direction of the visa office. But having said that, consular posts as a general matter do follow them. Okay, they listen to what the visa office has to say, and oftentimes will listen to their direction. I've had a lot of cases reopened after getting a denial, or after the consulate saying, no, the case has to be closed, you didn't respond, or some other problem, going to the visa office, discussing the matter with them, and finding out that the visa office would intervene, got the consular post to reopen the case, and getting the client's matter resolved. Okay, so the visa office is a very rich and useful tool. And in administrative processing cases, while your first direction is always going to be to go to the consulate, speak to an officer, engage the consular post. You don't want to go over anybody's head in the Department of State. Okay, when you can avoid it, don't do it. Or I should say, when you can avoid it, avoid it. What you want to do is you want to engage the consulate, find out what you can, and then if need be, go back to the visa office. And one thing I'm going to stress to everybody is you have to be patient. Okay, the immigration process is not 1, 2, 3. U.S. federal agencies is not 1, 2, 3. If you're from a lot of foreign countries, including India and South Asian countries, a lot of times the bureaucracy within that country, is also a long time. Just to get police clearance reports, just to get medical records, just to get new birth certificates, those can take a long time. You need to be prepared, okay, for the wait. If things don't go as smoothly as you expected, don't be totally shocked. Try to keep it in perspective, okay? And understand that admin processing is just a way for the consulate to get through your case. And your job, and maybe even more so our job as attorneys, is to make sure that your rights don't get glossed over, okay? To make sure that your case is still reviewed and properly adjudicated like everyone else's. And I think that's the biggest part to take away from that. Don't leave yourself in a position where you get stuck, but leave yourself in a position where you recognize that admin processing is occurring, and then look to ways that you can help to either facilitate a positive result or to make things move a little bit either faster or smoother than they are currently. One of the other things about admin processing is security checks. If something is in a security check under admin processing, don't expect to hear anything. Okay, there's really no way around it. And sometimes consular officers won't even tell you that it's based on security checks. What kind of security checks do we have? We have FBI security checks, we have Department of Homeland Security security checks, which means CBP, USCIS, ICE. We have other law enforcement agency security checks, okay? We sometimes will reach out to local police and central government police department agencies to find out if there's any disparate information or negative information about individuals that are applying for visas, whether it be for a green card or a non-immigrant visa. You know, those are important topics that you really have to consider. The other thing that you have to consider is how long it takes those different agencies to gather that information, go through it, analyze it, and then report back to the Department of State. You know, some of these agencies are totally overwhelmed. You know, USCIS, okay, and I'm giving you this as an example. USCIS does not get federal funding on its own. Just like the post office, it's charged with raising its own funds to keep itself moving. Okay, what does that create? That means that there are limited resources based on the amount of money that they're getting in. And under this administration, you know, we've talked about this in previous shows, they've put a little bit more pressure on USCIS to conduct more interviews, to go through the process with a little bit finer comb, and to catch fraud or misrepresentation or smaller or slight misgivings about a particular application with a magnifying glass, you know, and that's created more interviews, that's created more backlog, and immigration doesn't have the number of officers to handle it. So one of the things that you've got to be patient about, or actually one of the things you have to think about is the idea of patience, okay? We do the best we can to make sure that we're always on top of things. We definitely want to make sure that the consulates and the embassies are, but everything has to be looked at in perspective. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that happened last week was we had the elections, you know, and I'm hoping that everybody who is a citizen did go out and vote. If you registered to vote, I hope you utilized your power to vote, okay? It's an important power. And we still have people dealing with this issue now in Florida. You know, there's lawsuits that have been created because of this recount in Florida for their for their senator races, for their gubernatorial races. I mean, it's pretty significant. And this is not the only place. In Georgia, there's stuff going on. People are not conceding the losses. And so when you talk about, or when you think about the idea of having a voice, remember, being a U.S. citizen is an important privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege. And once you have that privilege, it's your duty, it's your right to go vote. Now again, you could conscientiously say, no, I don't believe in the system. And that's your right too. But I'm encouraging you all to have your opinion voiced one way or the other. And last week was an example of how that happens, you know. And anything that we're talking about related to immigration, we see it playing out in the realm of politics. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about that long and hard. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me, dev@banadlaw.com. dave@banadlaw.com. We have the Banad Law offices here in New York and Banad Immigration in India. Our offices are open 5 days a week, and they can take your call. I schedule consultations all the time. And I go to India every 3 months, okay? I spend 3 weeks every 3 months in India. So I'm happy to meet with friends and relatives during personal consultations. I do a lot of Skype consultations on these subjects. So if you have any questions related to administrative processing or the consular process in general, by all means, please reach out to me. And remember, this show is a new time, ladies and gentlemen. It's exciting. It's on the weekend now on ITV at 10 a.m. every Saturday, on HW News Network at 8:30 p.m. Okay, so on Saturdays, 10 a.m. in America, 8:30 p.m. in India. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found today's show informative. I hope you appreciate the information that I'm giving you guys. I definitely enjoy giving it to you guys, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Indo-American Passage, green cards, visas, and how to get them. Take care. I'm Dave Viswanath.